Hey, welcome back to another RSG video, and we are doing a special video today. I'm Ranger J 1999, part of the RSG crew, and I've got the crew minus one Loki, who has got some personal stuff that he has to take care of, but he's here in spirit. So let's introduce everybody. First of all, we have the one and the only, the troll extraordinaire, Dr. Finn Medicine Woman here. Also joining us is the government Wi-Fi stealer himself, the brown Gandalf, the beerless one, Grande Pappy Patron is here. And of course, the lovely, the most wanted, the one that puts Loki to sleep with her words, Miss Tits McVenom is here. And we have the amazing executive live producer, the one and only CG Carey here with us today. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. I'm especially good because you just gave me a promotion, because I'm not technically an executive producer. I'm just a lowly senior producer. So
well, someone told me you're executive live producer, and by someone I mean Grande.
You know what? I'll take it. Thank you,
I give people promotions every day. Sergeant Major Ranger J 1999.
Well, let's not get crazy here, okay?
If a new player comes into the game, it's a long and hard grind for them to get to the end right now. And especially right now with the end being heroic Sith Raid and needing kind of specific characters for some of the different phases. So what is the plan that you have with regards to new players and having them join and not get overwhelmed with how much there is to do and get in this game?
This is a really insightful question that I'm really glad you're asking, because it almost sounds like I fed you this question to tee me up to talk about what we're doing next, but I did not. So from a game health perspective, as I was mentioning before, this is one of those things that's really hard to explain to people, like why we're prioritizing to do new player features over what we call elder player, or what I made the mistake of saying 85 and above features. That's just game speak. We think about the player health across the game a lot. In this game in particular, a surprising number of players at 85, but there are still people coming into the game every day. And the more people sit at 85, the more daunting that experience can be for new players. So when I do road mapping, which I tend to do 2 to 3 years of road maps at a time. So I have like a 3-year plan. It's in no way going to stay the same. I have all sorts of approvals and checking in with people and talking to people about stuff, but the idea that of the direction I want the game to be and where I want it to be living 2 or 3 years from now. So one of those things is thinking about, what do I want the health of the elder game to be like? What do I want the health of the newer game? And in particular, we look at real world events that are going on at the same time. So with the Solo movie coming out in May, we felt like we always get an influx of new users around the movie. It's just one of those things that Star Wars is in the zeitgeist more than normal. And so we wanted to make sure that we did something for that new, we call cohort, inside of the game. And so all of the features that we've announced in the road ahead, and I'm going to tell you a couple other things. Many of the features are built with new players in mind. So the changes to chat that we announced in the road ahead is purposeful, because last year we wanted to make guilds very active and very important, and have people want to have their guilds be full and full of people that were playing actively. I think we did that to some great effect with Territory Battle and Wars, because now everybody in the guild matters. The downside of that is that everybody in the guild matters. So if you have a friend that you want to come bring into the game and they're level 10, you're not going to bring them into your, Sith Raid guild, or you're going to have to put them somewhere else. And there was no mechanic inside of the game to facilitate that. And I know that people use Discord and all sorts of other supplementary apps, but without something in-game, until that person has made the conscious decision that they want to become a part of the Discord community, there's like this moment where they're sort of trying to figure out like how much they care about this game and whether or not they're going to stick around. So it was important to us that that person wasn't living isolated inside of the game, which really they were. In fact, I think many of you were around for the launch of the game. I was not here at Capital Games at the time. A lot of the people here talk about the pre-guild time as like it was basically a single-player game. And I think so much about building blocks. And so a lot of what we're doing in Untitled Chapter 12, which is the next release that I won't give a month to, because months are for voting around here. We don't say months anymore. But the next update, we are doing a lot of building blocks. So the chat stuff where you can now direct message players. And that's just the chat feature. There's a lot more to that. What starts to happen, and I talk a lot about MMOs because that's my background, is the more that people are visible to each other. And so with this chat feature, we're also adding up to 500 person chat. We knew people wanted to talk to more than just their guild, and we knew they wanted to talk to more than just one-on-one. So these messages where you can start up a group with someone and you can chat to one person or two people, you can go all the way up to 500. And we have it set so that you can set it so that anybody that's in your guild or on your friends list can be in it. And then they can invite anybody from their guild or friends list. And so then you can start to get like friends of friends or guilds of friends or friends of guilds or alliances or however you want to do it. And 500 is a little bit of a limitation. We're starting with 500 and we'll see where we go. It's more about dipping our toe in the water and seeing how much people respond and how if it accomplishes the goals. When we do something like this, we look for goals. One of the things we're doing for new players is something that I personally I feel a lot of sort of affinity for because of it's something from Warhammer Online, which is newbie guilds. So what will happen now is players, when they come into the game and once they hit 22, which is the level that they're available to join guilds, they will automatically be put into a guild with a bunch of other people at the same level. And that will allow them to be able to start to understand how to be a guildmate. So donations and chat and raids and all of those things. And as they play through the game, they will level up into another guild and a more experienced guild. And we have some behind the scenes stuff going to prune people who aren't, who stop playing forever and all of those things. But the idea is that when those people finally get to 85 and they're maybe viable for one of your guilds, they're actually better equipped to be a good, outstanding guild member than they would be otherwise.
One of the things, talking about, how, kind of like your long range planning, how far ahead does Capital Games and do you guys plan for either a new character or a new ship or a new game mode?
So characters, we have a solid year roadmap of. And a lot of that is because we think about how we want to kind of hit all the different beats of the Star Wars universe. And so again, if you think about one of the sort of amazing things about this brand is that it means different things to different people. So for me, original trilogy is like my youth. But I remember I was teaching a history of video games at a college a couple of years ago, and all of my students were like all about the prequels. And I was like, this is blasphemy. And they were legitimately like, this is like the prequels. And then some of my friends' kids are all about Clone Wars. And I was like, oh my God, like it keeps evolving. And so for us to be able to hit all of those fantasies for people, to be current, because another amazing thing about Star Wars is that it's a living brand that's been active and keeps getting bigger and more. And, I'm sure you guys have seen all the announcements that they have around like more and more movies and things. And it's so exciting for us. Yeah, exactly. And so it's a living brand, and it can be almost daunting how much we want to do, because we get in serious fights in this building over this character or that character or this faction or that faction, or this one needs a rework and this one doesn't. And so it's like, for us, it's very changeable and very fungible, but we do plan about a year in advance. So we think about characters and ships together because they're often related to the same sort of theme or faction or universe or era. Features are a little different. And so in some ways, when the way we do it with these two teams that are going back and forth, sometimes we have to supplement what one team is working a little bit more overtime. And I don't mean literally overtime, although I do sometimes mean literally overtime, but also when they're sort of putting in the effort to be like, we're doing a big release of a big new feature, sometimes the other team sort of dials it down, takes a little break. Those guys, get a chance to like go see their families, that kind of thing. And then vice versa, so that like when the feature team and we're not planning on doing a huge feature release, those guys get to take some time off, and gals. And then that's when the other team, the content team, ramps up. So I would say that the two schedules, we have two roadmaps. One is the feature roadmap, which is several years in advance. And one is the content roadmap, which is about a year. And then they supplement each other, and they thematically must work together. But sometimes they are counterweights to each other, so that you can lean into one or the other. And that's just a development trick, so that we don't just ask the same team to burn the midnight oil time and time again.
How do you decide which factions to rework and when to release them?
Well, I'll use Bounty Hunters as an example because, we knew we wanted to do Bosk. We knew that Bounty Hunters were not super strong as they were. And we also knew they were incredibly, had a high ownership rates and high utility because they were required for the Dark Side Territory battle, because they're used for Trident Heist. Like, there are reasons for the bounty hunters to get a rework. And so it was very organic and felt very natural for us to do bounty hunters at this time, just because we'd come off of off an Old Republic beat. And we wanted to move into something that was a little bit more less like new shiny and like utility based, if that makes sense. It's like we have to hit both beats. We can't just always do new shiny, or people will be upset that we're just trying to make a buck off of them, right? Like, that's not the point. You know, the point is to keep hitting all different parts of the fantasy, as well as all different parts of what motivates people. And again, that's another kind of MMO thing, is thinking about sort of player motivations and what drives them. And sometimes you want to do stuff that is just good cleanup, you know? And so bounty hunters was really just a no-brainer. You know, I think the biggest lesson that we took from the Dark Side Territory battle internally, which was very, very painful for us, and particularly painful because of how many late hours people here worked, and then to have it not go out smoothly, was a personal frustration for me. You know, it's my fault. What I learned from Dark Side Territory battle was we knew we wanted it to be harder, and because we wanted the challenge to keep going up. You have to keep raising the ceiling of challenge, otherwise people just get bored. I know that people get frustrated when something is hard, but you can see even in the month, almost 2 months now since the Sith Raid's been live, people are starting to become masters of it. And I swear in like 2 months, they're going to have it, you know, like down to a science, right? So it has to be more difficult. But what we didn't think enough through was that not only was it more difficult, and we knew that there were fewer dark side characters owned by players, but we didn't realize how big the gap was, really, from a motivational standpoint. So like, we wanted to be challenging. We wanted to be like, okay, you're going to have to be a little bit scrappier. And like, don't get me wrong, territory battles are intended to drive deep into your squad so that you're like, I mean, and again, this is another sort of segmentation thing about players. Like, we have almost a 50-50 split of people who are collection drivers, they're driven by collecting things, and people who are driven by being competitive. And so the territory battles and territory wars are like a 1-2 punch of the collection people getting to show off. And, you know, you're damn right, I put my 7-star Lobot in every time. And territory wars people who are the really, really good competitors. And, you know, I'm ashamed to say, I kept looking at, like, Reddit yesterday had a bunch of screenshots of people that had put up like 60+ defenses with Night Sister squads. And like, I like lost 10 teams to a Night Sister squad, I'm ashamed to say, in the last territory war. So I was like, oh, please don't have my guild on there. Like, please. So like, it's intended to sort of balance between those different player types, because they have different needs and different motivations. And so battles is supposed to be that. But I think we were not intentional or purposeful enough about how big the gap was between ownership, and then compound it with the difficulty, and then compound it that it had a pretty major bug when it launched. I then had to work over Thanksgiving for, you know, and so then it didn't hit all the right buttons that the Lifetime one did. So it's a really, really long preamble to say, one of the things I've learned about deciding factions is that we need to do a better job of getting people to start to get characters and get them out there, and they need to move through the character cadence before we start requiring those factions somewhere. And so we're trying to do that in a way where we're kind of leading you by the nose. And I love to watch and listen to people sort of theorize about what we're going to do next, because often it's very correct, because it's like, well, wait a minute, if you just did this and you just did that, then isn't this next? And that's what we're trying to do, but we can never really confirm it.
So let's talk about heroic Sith Raid. Some of us here are doing the heroic Sith Raid. Some are still not quite there yet. So when you're designing something like the heroic Sith Raid, how do you determine the difficulty that you want it at? I mean, and do you try to anticipate how long it will take, like a top guild, those top echelon guilds, to complete it? Is that part of the factor that you guys look at for something like that?
Absolutely. And the answer is like days, right? It's never hours. It's never as long as you want it to be. But it did take, I think it took almost a month for the first Treya unlock, maybe a month and a half. So, you know, it's absolutely a factor, is this idea of raising the ceiling of difficulty so that there's something to aspire to. It's like, I want to be great. I want to be successful. I want to be this. And I do it by seeing other people be that. We wanted it to be very, very difficult. And we knew that these top guilds, some of whom we had play the raid early and, immediately beat it. We really tried to factor in the balance of that. And that's something that we learned also from the AAT release, was we should have released more tiers of the AAT. And that's something we'd like to go back and do whenever we have the time, which I haven't said anywhere else. So this is exclusive to you guys.
Oh.
But that was one of the reasons why the Sith Raids got more tiers, because we wanted everybody to be able to participate and be able to feel like they're moving through the ranks and feel that sense of accomplishment. And I know that it's exceptionally difficult for a lot of people. And I think that people are feeling the gnashing right now because it's like a combination of things. They don't understand it. There was the rewards issue. There's a bug right now in how rewards are given out, how the scores are doled out. But once all of the dust sort of settles around that, like we have an estimation of when we think people will have it pretty much on farm. And the guys that do this kind of number stuff, they're really good at what they do. Like, they've been pretty much bang on for when people are going to start soloing raids and when, all the way through the system. And so what we have to always be thinking about, which is another feeder into the roadmap, is when is the next thing that's going to come out so that the people at the very, very top don't get bored.
Awesome. So this is kind of going off of that. So when you're developing in-game content like Heroic Sith Raid or something along that lines, what's the criteria that you use to determine, say, what is a top player? What is the criteria you use to determine what is a top guild? What are those thresholds? What do you look at? Is there a number? Is it a multitude of things? How do you guys go about labeling that?
So it's definitely a multitude of things. We have a lot of different metrics that we use that have to do with GP is one of them. I mean, I think the addition of GP has been a game changer in a lot of ways for people in terms of just understanding and being able to articulate, although it's not infallible. But so GP is definitely a thing. But so is activity and investment in a lot of ways. And I mean investment of time, not just money. So we have a couple of different orthogonals by which we measure this. And I'm being a little bit vague and
that's fine.
Termy, because I don't want to give away all of the secret sauce,
sure.
But and also because I don't know all of the secret sauce. And so there's a couple of different ways we consider people, because especially in a free-to-play game, you can't look at your player base as one type of person, because there are people who will spend their way to something, there will people who will play their way to something, and there are people who do both. There will people who do a little bit of both. You guys talk about it a lot on RSG about whales and dolphins and krakens and minnows and guppies and all of the different sort of things, and that's just one aspect of it. That's the spend aspect. There's time, there's investment, like there's time, like duration, like how long they've been playing. There's time, like how much they play in a day. There's whether or not they spend their time doing one activity or another. And so we look at lots and lots and lots of data.
So I just want to follow up on this because, of course, Ranger knows this was one of my big misconceptions, I guess I would say. We've had this discussion amongst ourselves on stream about the difference between between just the five of us consider to be a top-end guild or what we consider to be a top-end player. And we can't sometimes get a consensus among ourselves sometimes.
Right.
And then sometimes whenever I've seen someone else say something like, well, I played up until the end. I got to level 85, and so that was the end, and so I stopped, and I started over again. And I was like, well, that's cool, but that's, level 85 is not the end, right?
No.
There's so much more past that just whenever you get there, it's not the end, right? That's not necessarily in-game content. I mean, I don't mean to speak for you, McVenom, but I know a couple of times you're level 85, and you've been there for a while, and sometimes you've felt like you're not even close to where to where some of us are at. So I guess that's kind of like a follow-up question to that, as far as do you guys even make divisions like that? And I know, and part of this is coming from, for example,
territory wars with the defense one. That really started the conversation.
That really started the conversation.
Like 130 million guild was putting in like 28, 30 teams on defense, and we don't because I'm in a 128 right now, and I was 120 around the time that it started. We don't consider ourselves a top guild because we're trying to push to the level of like TI and Dark Lords and Alliance Alpha and all like the really high GP guilds. So we were wondering like, why are we considered a top guild and having to put more on defense?
Yeah, no, I think honestly that changed, and because we wanted to make it so quickly, we just reversed it. As you imagine, some of those guilds that you named, in fact, came to me and said, "I wish you hadn't reversed 35 because that was the only way it was going to be fun for us." But we should have, we should have probably made it just like literally like the 0.0001% GP. Just to see if those people, but even then, there's not consensus among those guilds either. I don't think. It's absolutely a whole bunch of different vectors. I think one of the ways we think about it is about when people started playing, because depending on what you lived through in this game, your appetite changes. And so, I mean, we all like to talk about the good old days and remember when we didn't even have, in my day, we didn't even have chat, we didn't have guild. It's a psychological component of this, which is that as people invest more and more in a game, their investment needs to return more. And so for highly invested players, which is a term we use a lot in the studio, and again, invested does not mean necessarily money, it also means time. For those players, there has to be an increasing complexity and also sort of an agency, so that like we can release a feature that tells you like this is how you have to play, but people will get sick of it really quickly. The idea is to create it to be more open-ended. And so how we sort of figure out what people want and when they want it and who wants what and who doesn't is literally all I think about pretty much all day long for my entire job. And so it's really hard to distill into like a language. I just keep using words until you cut me off. Words.
Next question.
More words.
Hey, cut Carrie off somebody. Geez. We got another question here.
I know you guys are usually 2-hour long streams.
We are.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
that's
2 hours.
That's so funny, Carrie. We were actually going, we need to keep this short for her. Like, we don't want to keep her here for hours and hours.
Yeah. My team would say, you don't know me, because they can't get me to shut up. I am happy to wax philosophical about this game forever. And we purposefully did not do world chat, and I can.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I could spend an hour talking about why I think world chat is
let's not relive those horror stories.
Yeah,
Star Wars general chat just sounds like an off-light.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you ever done an MMO, you know what she's talking about. World chat can be just brutal.
As soon as if I ever open a game with world chat, I automatically mute world chat. It's like, it's too much.
But there was still level 90 porgs, I think, for a while was the discussion.
Wait. I think we need to stop right there. We need to talk about level 90 porgs.
No, Shane, stop it. You're a bad man.
That's right. I'm announcing it right here. Level 90 porgs.
No.
I'm kidding.
Please.
I'm kidding.
There's going to be a whole
Finn just had a heart attack.
I know.
You just made my day and dashed it all in like the same minute.
I'm sorry. That's what we like to do here.
That's right.